Well, there's been more violence in Syria. On the last day of the ceasefire, another car bomb has ripped through southern Damascus, while government warplanes have carried out a heavy bombardment of the capital suburbs. Let's now talk to Sharmine Narwani. She's a political analyst covering the Middle East. Well, Russia says that the duty of foreign powers is to use all the influence they have to make all the sides in the Syrian conflict lay down their arms. Do you think there is a genuine desire for peace amongst international players?
No, I don't think there is a desire for peace equally among the various international parties to this conflict. I think the Russians are absolutely right that it is incumbent upon the parties that have a relationship with the rebels and the opposition to gather that side up, because, you know, let's sort of roll back and look at this. There are two sides to this conflict. One is the Syrian government, and that can be held accountable in a simple way. The other side is very diffuse, and this is where the problem's always been, that you cannot control all the elements, and even if, let's say, the majority of opposition figures want to participate, you have a few spoilers who ruin it. And we know, by and large, who's supplying the spoilers, you know, in this. Countries like Saudi Arabia and Qatar and Turkey. Now, if the international community was serious about a resolution of this conflict, or at least helping to diffuse the humanitarian element of this conflict, which is ostensibly what they argue, they would immediately penalize, perhaps even sanction the countries that are providing arms to rebels who are the spoilers every time there are efforts to bring the parties together and achieve ceasefire. It is the duty of the permanent members of the Security Council to ensure peace and security. Otherwise, honestly, they shouldn't be part of the Security Council. Unfortunately, the three Western members, the FACA states, France, UK, and US, their goal seems to be more to have their side win in this, and currently it looks like at any cost. With no concern for the humanitarian crisis they're constantly advocating.
So even rhetoric which we see from those so-called spoilers, as you say, the likes of Saudi Arabia and Turkey, and indeed we've seen some violence between Syria and Turkey. Even today there's been some cross-border shelling. Even that sort of rhetoric coming from outside the country really does have an impact on what's happening within Syria.
You know, it does. I mean, this whole Syrian business has been so dominated by narratives and storylines. And, just a few days ago, it was a very unusual thing, and it really hasn't been picked up very much in the mainstream media or even alternative. But Hürriyet, the Turkish paper, quoted a senior commander of the U.S. Army in Europe saying that we're not sure if these shells are from the Syrian army or if they're from rebels trying to drag Turkey into the crisis, or from the Kurdish Workers' Party, the PKK. So this, to come from such a senior figure, was a hint that perhaps NATO was uncomfortable with what they saw as potentially a Turkish effort to get NATO, to invoke Article 5 and get NATO to come into the defense of their ally. It's very dangerous what's happening on that border now, but the fact that NATO has not responded, I think, has put Turkey on notice.
Okay, what about, just briefly and finally, Turkish ambitions, along with Saudi Arabia and other countries who want to see Assad go? That's one area of the conflict, but of course we're now seeing rival sectarian groups from Iraq. They're now thought to be increasingly involved in this conflict. Do you think that Syria is now really seriously becoming a platform for regional Muslim factions to fight their cause, a sectarian issue rather than just a power-toppling issue?
Look, again, I caution people, this conflict has been so much about a war of words, propaganda, storylines and narratives. The story about Iraqi Shiites, I believe, that sort of hit the media in the last day or two has come from a piece in the New York Times without the kind of sourcing you'd expect from the New York Times. And this follows weeks, if not longer, of major mainstream Western media suggesting that there were between 1,500 and 5,000 Hezbollah troops in Syria, that Hezbollah was arming the Syrian government, which is laughable for Middle East watchers because it's always been the opposite, and that even the Iranian Revolutionary Guards are involved in Syria. What we're seeing on our TV screens are increasingly Islamist militants fighting on the opposition side, and this has become very nerve-wracking to people who want regime change in Syria. So they need to keep the Syrian regime looking bad, and to suggest that these vilified Middle Eastern elements, Hezbollah, Iran, Iraqi sectarian Shiites are coming in to help the Syrian government is one way to keep the narrative or the storyline going in their favor. Otherwise, certainly in public perception, they're going to lose out as we increasingly see stories in the press about jihadists, control opposition strongholds.
Really interesting to hear your perspective. Thank you very much indeed, Sharmine. Sharmine Narwani, political analyst, joining me from Beirut. Well, still ahead for you this hour here on RT. There's more.